Hi everyone, it's Professor Mackey. I'd like to give you an overview of what a literary interpretation and analysis paper should look like. So for MLA format for your heading, you're going to put your first and your last name, your professor's name, the course, and then the day, the month, the year. And if you're in English 121 or 122, you will put your last name and the page number in the upper right corner. If you're in 095, you don't need to worry about that for now. Your title is going to be centered, and it should have something to do with your argument. And your introduction paragraph, you're going to want to hook your reader. So a hook is a couple sentences that get your reader interested in your topic, whatever that topic may be. Hooks can be vivid, they can be detailed, but the introduction itself should be largely general. You want to offer your reader a zoomed out snapshot of your overall paper in your introduction. So you hook your reader. You can do that with a rhetorical question, a vivid anecdote or example, a historical quotation that you like. Your hook should be a couple sentences. So for example, in this literary interpretation and analysis paper, the student writes, "Have you ever reached a point in your life where you began to feel lost or unsure of the next step that you should take? Was there someone or something in particular you would turn to, a parent, a neighbor, or even religion when you needed advice?" So those are two good rhetorical questions that get the reader interested in the topic. And then the writer goes on to introduce the text. So you want to introduce the author, the first and last name, and then the name of the story. And then in your introduction, you're going to give a couple sentences of summary about the story. You want to assume that your reader has not read the story, so you're going to want to make sure that you're explaining the big picture for somebody that's not familiar with it. So this student writes, "In Tim Gertroux's short story, Welding with Children, the author shows us that not all people are lucky enough to have someone like this in their lives." So like a role model. The story revolves around Mr. Bruton and his 4 grandchildren whom he watches on occasion. The mothers of the children are constantly busy and self-absorbed, and the fathers are absent as the children were all born out of wedlock. So this is just summary, plot summary. It's not arguable. Everybody that read the story would agree with this. While watching his grandchildren, Bruton begins to realize that their mothers have not instilled in them any moral or religious values, any moral rules or religious values, and he makes the decision to step in and end the vicious circle of bad parenting by making an effort to be part of his grandchildren's lives, thus improving their futures. Okay, so now we're going to get to the thesis. Now, your thesis statement for a literary analysis and interpretation paper is going to be what you think the deeper meaning of the story is. Now, unlike the summary, the deeper meaning is arguable, it's subjective. What that means is that each person is going to have a different viewpoint, a different thesis, and that is totally fine because there's many different variations, and in fact that's what makes literary interpretation so fun and interesting, is you get to see what other people, how they interpreted the deeper meaning of a particular story. So in this case, the student writes, "The message of this story is that it is important to have values and role models to guide your life and inspire you to improve." Okay, so the thesis is the guiding argument of the entire paper. So we know that in each body paragraph, we're going to be showing support for that thesis statement. So I'm just going to take you through this argument fairly quickly just so you get an idea. So the topic sentence, you again want to connect to the thesis and connect the main idea of that body paragraph to the thesis. So for example, here's the first body paragraph, the topic sentence for the first body paragraph. "Throughout the story, having a role model is viewed as an invaluable gift, one which Bruton lacks while he's in school." So you notice that first sentence there, it mentions role model. So you're going to always want to mention the main idea of your thesis and then tie it in to the main idea of that body paragraph. So we're talking about a role model throughout the essay, but in this particular paragraph, we're focusing, we're zooming in on the role model when this main character Bruton is in school. Now, within each body paragraph, you want to give at least one direct quotation from the story that's going to prove the point of that paragraph. So, judging from the topic sentence, you can expect that it's going to be a direct quotation that has something to do with Bruton's time in school, and it's going to prove that he did not have a role model while he was in school, and that was part of the problem. So again, you want to set up your quote, you want to frame it. So tell the reader what's going on in the story before you drop in the quotation. So for example, in this paragraph, the student writes, "With no one to look up to, he dropped out of college after only one semester and said he, quote, got his money's worth learning about people that don't have hearts no bigger than birdshot." And then when you close out that direct quotation, you're going to put your parenthetical citation, which is just going to be the page number in parentheses and then the period. Anytime you have to change the words, use the square brackets to show that you've changed a word in the direct quotation. So then the writer goes on to explain how this quote proves his or her point. So the writer says, "This is a common example of how people lose their way and cannot succeed when their role models are not giving and generous, as indicated by the phrase, hearts no bigger than birdshot." So I want you to notice here that it's not just enough to give the reader the quote, you have to explain what about this quote proves your point. So you're going to want to do that in each and every body paragraph. So the next body paragraph, the topic sentence is, "Bruton's turning point comes when he finds a role model in an unexpected place." Okay, so we know now that this is tied to the thesis. We're still talking about role models here, but we're no longer talking about role models in school. We're talking about how he found a role model in an unexpected place. And then again, in this body paragraph, you go on to support with a direct quotation. Frame that quotation, set it up, tell the reader what's going on in the story, and then explain the quotation and how it relates to your point. So again, in the body paragraphs, you're framing a quotation and then you're explaining how it supports your point. So I want you to look at this next body paragraph, the topic sentence. "Many times when people don't know where to turn for answers, they turn to religion, which can be viewed as an omnipresent role model for all." So once again, we have this, we're tying back to the thesis by mentioning role model, and we know that the focus of this particular body paragraph is going to be on religion and how that provides a role model of sorts for this character. Within the body paragraph, again, we have direct quotations that support the point. So obviously the direct quotations are going to have to do with how, in fact, religion is a role model for this character in this story. And then the next body paragraph, having someone, here's the topic sentence, "Having someone to look up to is a wonderful thing, but in the children's case, the people who should serve as role models to them are either absent or negative influences." So here again, you notice that we're repeating role models. We're tying it back to the main idea, to the thesis, the overall argument. But this body paragraph is zooming in on a different point. Here now we're talking about the children and how they did not have a positive role model. So I think you get the point now. When you're going to conclude, you want to zoom back out to the big picture, and you might want to, throughout the essay, once you introduce the first and last name of the author, just refer to the author by his or her last name. But then when you conclude, it's always nice to remind readers the full name of the author and the name of the story. So this is how the student starts off this conclusion paragraph. "In the end, While Welding with Children" by Tim Gertrude may appear to be a comedic tale about working class life in the Deep South, the story does have a serious message. And then the writer goes on to remind readers of the overall message, summarize the argument, and then you want to end with some kind of twist. You want to give the reader something to think about. You can raise another issue in your conclusion. You can connect the point of this paper to a larger social commentary, or you can just have a little unique way of closing it out, maybe a vivid phrase or sentence or something like that. So for student, um, this student wrote, to put it in biblical terms, even though there may be many lost lambs in the world, it only takes one shepherd to set them on the right path. So that was a nice way of ending it, because it really does stick in your mind. And again, the story does have these biblical references. So however you want to conclude it, you just remember your main thing in your conclusion. You want to zoom back out to the big picture, remind readers of your overall argument, and then you want to end with something that is going to stick in the reader's mind.